Hello everyone, and welcome to our presentation on Jordan Peele's 2017 film, Get Out. Today we will explore how the film critiques race, class, and the commodification of black bodies, using horror as a lens to expose systematic oppression. Our analysis draws on several theoretical frameworks, including Stuart Hall's ideas on representation, Marxist concepts of labor and alienation, and critiques of liberal ideology. This presentation is part of our MACS 100 Analytical Media Making coursework, created by Isabella Pratt, Benjamin Davis, Uxmar Tapia, and Ariella Shiloh. Get Out blends psychological horror with social thriller to highlight racial and class anxieties in contemporary America. While the film is a gripping horror story, it also operates as a social critique, exposing how liberal racism and racial fetishization persist under the guise of politeness and progressivism. Today, we will focus on two central questions. First, how does Peele visualize systematic racism through cinematic form? And second, how are black bodies commodified as labor in both literal and symbolic ways? By examining camera work, narrative structure, sound design, and character interactions, we can see how Peele critiques the ideological systems that sustain racial and economic inequalities. In short, the film shows us that horror can reveal uncomfortable truths about society. Stuart Hall famously stated that representation is not a mirror of reality, but rather the construction of meaning. In Get Out, we see this principle in action. Chris, the protagonist, is cast as a token black guest, a familiar trope in Hollywood cinema. He is simultaneously included and marginalized, representing how black individuals are often made visible for the convenience of white characters but denied full social agency. Shohat and Stam suggest that stereotypes function as instruments of social control, reinforcing existing hierarchy. Chris's experiences at the Armitage party exemplify this dynamic, as his presence is framed to entertain and validate the white characters' liberal self-image while maintaining their dominance. Peele challenges this by making Chris's perspective central, giving voice to what is usually invisible in mainstream media. Peele uses visual techniques to communicate racialized experiences. One of the most powerful examples is The Sunken Place, a visual and metaphorical representation of black marginalization. When Chris is hypnotized by Missy, his consciousness is literally and figuratively displaced, illustrating how systems of power silence black voices. Additionally, Peele employs framing to isolate Chris in a predominantly white space, amplifying his sense of alienation. Props in the film also function as racial signifiers. The teacup used in hypnosis symbolizes control and submission, while the silver spoon represents inherited privilege and class hierarchy. Even small objects are imbued with meaning. By reconfiguring Hollywood's traditional racial imagery, Peele centers black experience rather than erasing it. The cinematography, combined with mise-en-scene, subtly codes race, allowing viewers to experience Chris's isolation and the subtle violence of microaggressions. This visual strategy makes the horror both psychological and socio-political, turning genre conventions into tools for ideological critique. Peele's casting and character interactions reject the notion of a post-racial or colorblind society. Instead, the film employs a color-conscious approach. Many of the white characters at the Armitage estate perform racial awareness, claiming liberal values, but their actions reveal subtle forms of fetishization and microaggression. A clear example is a scene where guests say, "We'd vote for Obama a third time." On the surface, this seems progressive, but in context, it exposes performative liberalism. Peele critiques the ideology of colorblindness, showing it as a mask that hides systematic racism rather than eradicating it. By making race visible and central to the narrative, Get Out challenges audiences to confront the everyday operations of racial power that persist under the guise of tolerance. Race and commodification intersect dramatically in Get Out. The Armitages literally commodify black bodies through the coagula procedure, transplanting white consciousness into black bodies. This horrific process is an allegory for racial capitalism, where black labor, culture, and even physicality are exploited for white benefit. Marx's concept of alienation is vividly illustrated through the sunken place. Chris is physically present but psychologically displaced, illustrating the disconnection between labor and agency that workers experience under capitalist systems. Horror is used strategically here. Peele translates exploitation into instinctive visual terms, making the audience feel the terror of commodification. By linking racial oppression to economic exploitation, the film demonstrates that systematic racism cannot be separated from broader structures of inequality. The horror genre thus becomes a tool for social critique, turning metaphor into a tangible experience for viewers.
Class and political economy. Class functions as a critical framework in Get Out. Marx argued that the economic base shapes the ideological superstructure, and the Armitages embody the liberal elite whose wealth rests on hidden exploitation. They present themselves as benevolent and progressive, yet their comfort is literally built on the consumption of black bodies. Peele emphasizes how their wealth and privilege allow them to disguise exploitation behind charm, politeness, and carefully performed allyship. Peele also contrasts this dynamic with more idealized portrayals of black success, such as the utopian version of Black Wealth in Black Panther. This contrast highlights the hypocrisy of the bourgeois elite in Get Out, whose progressive language masks their dependence on domination. Language, manners, and civility function as tools that soften the appearance of power, making the horror of exploitation feel disturbingly normal. By linking race and class, this film shows how social hierarchy is maintained not only through overt violence, but through subtle, everyday systems of inequality that appear harmless on the surface. Slide 8. Culture, Industry, and Ideology. The Frankfurt School teaches that mass media reproduces dominant ideology through entertainment. Peele subverts this expectation by using the popular horror genre he critiques. He critiques capitalist and racial systems while still participating in the entertainment market. This creates a layer of self-aware commodification. The film profits from the industry it is critiquing. Audiences are drawn in by suspense, scares, and familiar horror tropes, but beneath the surface, the film integrates social hierarchies. This dual function, entertainment and critique, illustrates the power of genre to engage viewers while conveying ideological critique. Peele's success demonstrates that popular media can carry meaningful social commentary even within structures of commodification. Get Out's narrative structure reinforces its thematic concerns in deliberate and powerful ways. The linear story unfolds entirely through Chris's perspective, which places the audience directly inside his tension, confusion, and growing sense of danger. By aligning viewers with his viewpoint, Peele ensures that the audience not only observes the film's racial and class dynamics, but feels their effects just as Chris does. Flashbacks and strategic sound design, including camera clicks, silence, ringing, and audio distortion, highlight moments of psychological fragmentation and signal how trauma resurfaces in unexpected ways. These auditory cues remind the viewer that Chris's internal experience is just as important as the external plot. Symbolism plays an essential role in communicating deeper meaning. Photography becomes a tool of control and truth, representing Chris's ability to see through performance and reveal what others try to hide. The deer scene invokes themes of empathy, victimization, and discarded lives, foreshadowing how black bodies are treated as expendable within the Armitage's world. Hypnosis, perhaps the film's most unnerving device, illustrates how the mind and body can be manipulated to maintain social dominance. Through these symbols, Peele layers meaning into every moment. By blending classical realism with allegorical horror, Peele communicates both literal and ideological truths at once. The audience experiences Chris's vulnerability, his isolation, his fear, and loss of agency, while simultaneously absorbing the film's social critique about systemic power and exploitation. The narrative form, combined with carefully crafted visual and auditory strategies, ensures that the film operates not only as a gripping horror story, but also as a framework for analyzing race, class, and ideology. Peele's mastery of form allows horror to function as a lens through which systemic oppression becomes visceral rather than abstract. Viewers do not simply learn about these issues, they feel them. In doing so, Get Out transforms theoretical discussions of race and class into lived experience, making the film's commentary both accessible and emotionally resonant. Thematic and ideological content. The central theme of Get Out is racism hidden beneath liberal benevolence. Peele shows how seemingly inclusive or progressive attitudes can function as a cover for deeply rooted prejudice. Ideologies of meritocracy and consumer freedom are revealed as myths that conceal systemic exploitation, allowing those in power to maintain dominance while appearing open-minded. This tension becomes central to understanding the film's critique of the post-racial narrative. The sunken place powerfully symbolizes this ideological containment. Chris appears to have agency. He moves through the world, makes choices, and interacts with others, but his consciousness is ultimately trapped and controlled. This becomes a metaphor for the illusion of freedom within oppressive social systems, where marginalized people may feel present but unheard, visible but voiceless. Peele uses this imagery to show how racist structures don't always rely on overt violence. They are often upheld through psychological control and cultural narratives that reinforce inequality. By exposing the violence embedded in post-racial rhetoric, Peele challenges the idea that racism disappears simply because people adopt the language of tolerance or progressivism. Instead, he reveals how such rhetoric can be self-serving, allowing privileged groups to avoid accountability. Through the horror genre, Get Out makes the visible, systemic ways that power operates in everyday life through social cues, institutions, and friendly interactions that mask domination. In doing so, the film urges the audiences to recognize the persistence of racial and class-based hierarchies, even within spaces that claim to be progressive or enlightened. Intersection of race and class. Race and class intersect through Get Out, shaping nearly every interaction and source of tension in the film. Race acts as a visible marker of hierarchy, signaling who is treated as an outsider or as a resource, while class operates more subtly and often invisibly to sustain those inequalities. The Armitage's wealth depends on the literal consumption and appropriation of black bodies, revealing how economic power is built on radicalized exploitation. Racialized exploitation. At the same time, Chris's labor as a photographer is commodified within capitalist markets, showing how even creative work becomes part of a system that extracts value from marginalized individuals. Peele demonstrates that social identity and economic power function as codependent systems of control. This is not just a story about racism or classism alone, but how the two reinforce one another to maintain a broader structure of domination. The horror genre makes these intersections tangible and visceral, encouraging the audience to see and feel how racial and economic hierarchies operate beneath everyday interactions. The intersectionality underscores that oppression cannot be understood through a single lens. It is the combo of social and economic forces that produce the systemic inequality at the heart of the film. In conclusion, Get Out demonstrates how the horror genre can powerfully critique both race and class oppression at the same time. Peele uses familiar genre conventions, suspense, distortion, bodily horror, not just to entertain, but to reveal the deeper structures of systemic inequality, liberal hypocrisy, and the commodification of black bodies. By embedding these critiques within a mainstream film, Peel makes the audience confront uncomfortable social realities they might otherwise ignore. Ultimately, Get Out challenges audiences to think critically about the world around them. It asks whether popular media can ever truly break free from the mechanisms of commodification it exposes, and whether viewers are willing to confront the persistent racial and class-based hierarchies embedded in everyday life. Thank you for your attention, and we look forward to any questions or discussion you may have.